The advice that you've heard about Amazon FBA product research is wrong. Look for low competition, high demand products. Source small, light, easy to airship products. Develop your product really fast with quick differentiation like bundles, changing the color, changing the design slightly. Look, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news here, but these approaches are a high probability way to get absolutely destroyed and to lose your investment and to fail at Amazon FBA. But in this video, I'm going to go over a product research hack that will set you apart from the competition, that will prepare you for the new professional era of Amazon, and that will make it much easier to compete and win with the products that you select. Let's go. What is up, guys? Welcome to Heist. This YouTube channel is dedicated to dropping weekly value bombs, looking at the e-commerce landscape and more specifically Amazon FBA and how you can succeed. And one of the highly sought after topics in this space is how to do product research effectively. And there's a good reason, because if you can successfully identify products that have a high probability of you having success in the medium and long term, the likelihood that you can scale, that you can grow, that you can pull profits, and ultimately exit and build a viable brand and asset go up tremendously. But it's not easy to do product research effectively, and it's certainly not easy if you listen to a lot of the material that's out there currently and that's been put out there in the past by the Amazon FBA guru industry. Frankly, what worked then is not going to work now, and it's not going to work in the future. And to understand this, let's think a little bit about a product life cycle. The average life cycle of a pretty good product on Amazon is typically about 2 years. And that means that you deploy it, you launch it, you kind of get to steady state around 6 months. And then really from that 6 month period to the 2 year period, if you've got a good offer, if you found success with your launch, you tend to go pretty well, right? It's pretty predictable. Your revenue profits tend to be pretty solid, but usually about that 2 year mark is when it gets a little bit more difficult. You get more competition. Maybe people come out with different offers, and it becomes a little bit more of a price war where you see margin compression, you see less earnings, and you either need to shake up the product a little bit and improve upon it, or you need to fill up other products in your pipeline to cover for that lack of growth. Now, if you use those old school approaches for Amazon FBA product research, where you go into a software program, you put in a couple filters that everybody and their mom puts in, a $15 product, really light, really small, low competition, high demand, oftentimes those products have like a 3 to 6 month product life cycle, because by the time you source it, manufacture it for 30 days, put it on a boat for 30 to 50 days, and it gets into Amazon, by the time you originally did product research, there might be 20 competitors. And when you've got a very similar product that's basically slapping a logo on a private label product from China, you bring that in and you're facing 20 other people. Guess what? The only way for you to differentiate ultimately is going to be on price, and that is just a race to the bottom, and you erode your profits and the viability of that product long term. But on the flip side of that, to really understand product life cycles effectively, especially as we enter this new era of Amazon, let's say that you want to actually exit your business. So you build up this brand over 2, 3, 4 years. You've got this fleet of products that are doing pretty good. You go to sell to, say, an Amazon aggregator, which $15 billion plus have been pumped into the space now. When they're paying a multiple on your business, whether it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7x the value of the earnings of your business, what they're ultimately placing a bet on is that your earnings are going to be predictable for that multiple of time. So if they pay a 5x multiple, they need to replicate those earnings for 5 years to even recoup their initial investment. And obviously they're going to be looking for growth trajectories. They're going to be looking for ways to eke out more profits than you did. But ultimately, if your products don't continue to at least hold steady state and ideally grow over that period of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years that an acquirer purchases your brand, it's not going to be easy to sell. And so the new era of Amazon is a new product research playbook, and it really needs to be focused on a 2+ year minimum product life cycle. But ultimately, we want to get it into that 4 or 5+ year playbook, such that we've got a brand, we've got defensible margins, and we can ultimately build an asset that people want to buy. Now, Amazon's gotten a lot harder, right? We've got more competition, we've got more sophisticated competition. The operations, the end-to-end processes around managing an Amazon FBA business is not like 5 years ago when you can just go to China, slap a logo on it, ship it over in an airplane, and then you're making $30,000 a month. There's definitely more to it now. But the good news about the Amazon space is that you can pick your shots. And I love this analogy by Warren Buffett. There's finite games and then there's infinite games, right? So take a game like baseball. You've got 3 strikes before you're out. So you can't wait for the perfect pitch because your strike zone is pretty wide in baseball. So you might have to swing for balls that are too high, too low, too outside, too inside, because you can't wait for a perfect pitch to be an effective hitter in baseball. But when you're an entrepreneur, when you're building physical products businesses, when you're deciding on which Amazon FBA products to launch, you have an infinite number of choices, and you can ultimately wait for that sweet spot opportunity that meets your budget, that meets your criteria, and that has a competitive set that can be really effective for a high probability of success. And so we're going to walk through some of these strategies and product research hacks that you can leverage to be more competitive. So understanding the competitiveness of the Amazon landscape, I'm going to rewind to my business school days. Those hard yards of studying in school, but one of the really cool frameworks that came out of my college business education is something that's called the Porter's 5 Forces model, which really helps you to understand competitive markets, of which obviously Amazon has increasingly become more competitive. And what this framework basically says is based on these 5 different forces, they're good predictors for how successful your business, or in this case, your Amazon product, can be. So let's talk through some of these. The first of which is the threat of new entrants or new competitors coming into your particular product. This is how hard it would be to recreate your product opportunity. It's the capital requirements, that's the amount of experience that's required. It's how good the brands are that are already in the space. And then in the Amazon model, it's how much of a flywheel has been established by existing players, so review counts and other things like that are specific to the Amazon model. In addition to the threat of new entrants, another one is the bargaining power of suppliers. So who you're going to get your product made, how much leverage do they have over you? So are you a big or small customer to them? Is your order size big or small? How sensitive is the pricing of your supplier? Ultimately, what kind of a structure do you have in place with the suppliers where you're getting your products made? The harder it is to replicate what your suppliers and you have come up with, the harder it is to compete against you. Another force is the threat of substitutes. So how hard would it be for a new technology, a new idea, a new differentiation, a new offer? How hard would it be to replicate that, substitute it for what you've got, and displace you in the marketplace? So this could be the things like the features of new products that come in, the pricing of new products, material and technology innovation, IP, and then ultimately how hard or easy is it for a customer to swap over to the substitute? So the more you make it difficult for substitutes to displace you and customers to select other options, the less competitive it is going to be for you. And then finally, the rivalry amongst competitors. And this goes back to that Buffett analogy of choosing the pitch. If you select a market where there's a whack load of competition, generally speaking, you've got to have a much better product, a much better offer, more experience, more capital, all those things that go into being successful in a business. So how many competitors there are, how diverse they are, how skilled they are, how fast the industry is growing, quality differences, brand loyalty, all of these things contribute to there being either more or less competitors in a particular product or space. So let's get into the product research hack and really take this Porter's 5 Forces model, understanding those competitive dynamics and forces, and figure out a product research methodology and approach such that you have a much higher probability of success and make decisions that place yourself in a much less competitive environment. So this product research methodology and strategy and hack is what I like to call the zigzag product research approach. And in the simplest terms, it means to zig when others are zagging, to go against the grain, to seek opportunities that others are shying away from, where you've got less rivalry amongst competitors and less competitors in the space, where the risk of other people entering that market is lower, where you've got a lot more leverage with your suppliers to carve out agreements and product development that others can't replicate, and where it's hard for others to substitute your product. And when we implement these strategies, a couple things happen. Number one, your probability of success goes up, because you ultimately have less competition and less people willing to enter the space. Number two, the likelihood that your product lifecycle is 4+ years goes up substantially, so you can get in there, find success, get that review moat, get that Amazon flywheel going early on such that over time it's incredibly difficult to compete against your offer, even if new people enter the space later on. And then finally, we're really creating products that are very, very, very difficult for anybody to replicate in less than 12 months. And in these hyper competitive sea of sameness products, that's really the death blow, right? It's very easy to enter. So you get a whack load of people that can really quickly develop a product similar to yours and enter the market. But when we institute these strategies, it becomes very difficult for you to do that in less than 12 months. And so you give yourself a massive head start on the industry, on competition, to build up that moat and to make the threat and risk of new entrants really low. So the first strategy in this zigzag product development and product research hack is to actually seek complexity. Now, hear me out. I know what you're saying, like, Adam, this is supposed to be easy. We don't want it to be harder. Well, what I'm talking about here are things that are just incrementally harder, but the vast, vast, vast majority of sellers and of other brands will shy away from. So to see complexity, one thing you can do is to actually create molds. Molds are these custom forms, typically where you inject plastic or other material into the product. It's different shapes, different sizes, different material, etc. And what these customs mold enable you to do is to create a one-of-a-kind product, number one. Number two, because it is a one-of-a-kind product and it is your mold, it's very difficult for other factories to replicate it. And third, you can get things like design patents and other moats that protect your actual product. And you can get super expensive molds. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on molds, but oftentimes most molds are less than $10,000. And with the right negotiation, with the right supplier, you can oftentimes share some of that expense with your factory. So let's say you've got a $10,000 mold that you want to create this really unique product. Maybe you only put in $5,000 of that and your supplier, pays $5,000. Or maybe that $10,000 cost, let's say, you add $1 a unit for the first 10,000 units. And so it's infused into those incremental product costs for a period of time. So there's ways to go about tackling the mold cost to make it feasible. Other complexity is pursuing something as simple as a design patent. Now, in the real world, so to speak, design patents are incredibly difficult to enforce. That's why people tend to go for utility patents, which are much more expensive. They're much more protective, but they also take oftentimes years to get. But with a design patent, especially on the Amazon platform, you can very easily make a submission if somebody copies or replicates the design of your product and have them booted off the Amazon platform. So pursuing IP complexity can be another win. I also love going after big, heavy products. Sometimes even products that can only be shipped via FBM. And the reason being, especially in the supply chain environment where it's very expensive to ship products via ocean now, most sellers and most brands are avoiding big, heavy stuff. They want the small stuff. They want to be able to air freight it. They don't want to deal with the complexity of the supply chain, and they go for the easier path and the path of least resistance. Well, guess what? When you chase those pitches, so to speak, that are big and heavy products, you get much less competition, less people are going to come after you, you have a more dedicated fleet of suppliers, and there's less competition. All of those things breed a higher degree of success if you execute properly. In that same vein, see complexity in terms of more expensive products. I love selling products that are more than $50 as an example. Again, most sellers on the Amazon platform, most brands are seeking those quick, easy wins. They're looking to deploy their capital in a more predictable way, they think, and so they select products that are $20, that are $15, that are $25. Well, guess what? Everybody wants products that are $15 and $25, and so you're going to be competing against a set of criteria that many other sellers and brands pursue. But when you get into $50, $75, $100, $500, $1,000 products, you can even take that same budget that you would have allocated for a $20 product, order less of them, make the same and or more amount of money, but your profits are wildly higher because there's less competition, there's more gross margin, there's less competition for ads, and you have more gross margin to actually scale and grow and market your product to find success. So see complexity in the form of more expensive products. Another golden rule of Amazon product research in the old guru days was, hey, don't go after electronics, don't go after products that require testing, don't go after products that have liability. Well, guess what? If your product requires an FDA certification, less people are going to pursue it. If your product requires a specific safety test, less people are going to pursue it. And in the new era of Amazon, where these product categories that require these things Amazon has really started to crack down and enforce it and suspend products that don't have that documentation, testing, and process in place. So many, even existing sellers, are scurrying away from these categories. And this stuff isn't crazy complex. Sometimes for a few $100s or $1,000 or so, you can get these tests done. It may only add a month to your process. But again, 99% of sellers won't go through that hassle, so you're now in a space where it's less competitive simply by choosing a product that's a little bit more complex from a testing standpoint. In that same vein, things that are electronic products that require firmware, that have boards on them, that maybe have a battery inside that is now a dangerous goods, which has some additional complexity with shipping and storage and warehousing. All those additional hurdles, again, are not crazy difficult, but are things that scare many other sellers away. So I'm not afraid of electronics. I'm not afraid of batteries because the degree of competition goes down significantly in those categories. And then finally, in the vein of these bigger, heavier products, just things that require some logistical complexity. So if you want to bring things from different factories that are required to assemble your product, if the shipping is a little complex, if you need to have warehousing, if you need to FBM some of the product, if it's breakable and you need to think through the packaging, all those additional incremental steps that are not rocket science add complexity to your supply chain that most people don't want to touch. So the first hack of the zigzag product research strategy is to actually see complexity, don't shy away from it. And then the second part of the zigzag strategy, and really a counterpart to it, is new forms of innovation. Again, the old school Amazon gurus were like, hey, here's an innovation. Instead of selling one, sell two, make it a bundle. Well, guess what? That's not really hard to replicate. Within 3 to 6 months, somebody else could come out with that same offer. Well, let's come out with a new color. Well, guess what? It's not hard to replicate a color. Very basic differentiation, minimal innovation on an offer. While it may work for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, maybe even 2 years, it's not going to work for 4+ years, and it's not going to be hard to replicate in less than 12 months. So some new innovation strategies that make it difficult to replicate your product and extend your product lifecycle and probability of success include things like material innovation. Can you make something out of brushed aluminum that used to be wood? Can you use a composite material that's lighter, stronger, better looking than, say, a metal product? Sometimes simple material changes that have never been done in your product category give you that leapfrog step to make your offer stand out and to make it hard to compete against you. Another one is size arbitrage. So an example I've used in my FBA blueprint course is a travel case for golf clubs, right? Most of those travel cases, those hard plastic travel cases, are pretty big. Well, what if you developed a unique mold and design that actually shelled those two together such that you could store it in half of the space? That would reduce your shipping costs both from Asia as well as to end consumers. It would make your offer more differentiated because it could be stored much more easily at a customer's house. And if you took a custom mold and a custom design that was size optimized and you got a design patent, guess what? Nobody else could copy that design feature in that product, and you have a massive, massive advantage in the space. So looking for those opportunities where there's size arbitrage, where you can reduce your costs that others can't, is a massive advantage. Another one that relates to the bargaining power of suppliers as well as the threat of new entrants is exclusivity agreements with your factories. I like to do this with every single one of my products, every single one of my factories. And again, custom molds and things like this really lend themselves to this. But basically, when you pursue a product, offer a differentiator, a specific unique innovation, make sure that you have an exclusivity agreement such that your factory will only produce that product and that offer for you. Does this mean that other factories can't try to copy you? No, but it becomes much more difficult and a much lower probability of your factory selling to 20 other sellers the exact same product. And then another form of new product innovation that you really don't think much about are things like optimizing your cash flow that others can't replicate. So working with factories on terms of 30, 60, even 90 days, such that you have cash cycles that are much faster than your competition. Working out agreements with your supplier where they can store a safety stock upstream in China that could cut down your production time and your end-to-end cash flow cycle by like a month. The quicker you're able to turn over cash, structure agreements with suppliers, and set up your supply chain such that you can move your product quicker and turn your cash quicker, the more of an advantage you're going to have. So in closing, yes, Amazon has gotten more competitive. Yes, you've got to be more thoughtful. You can't just slap a logo, ship it over on an airplane, and make 30 grand a month. But you also don't need to follow all of the sheep in the industry. You don't need to listen to dangerous advice out there around product development and product research. Zig while others are zagging. Chase complexity. Think about product innovation and offer development in a new light. Pick a pitch that you know you can hit out of the park. And when you do these things, the probability of your success, the difficulty of competitors replicating your offer and competing against you goes down, and the value of your brand, of your assets, and the sellability and exit potential goes up dramatically. So I hope you found some nuggets in this video that you haven't heard elsewhere. This stuff isn't rocket science, but when you put these incremental steps together, that's really where the magic happens, and that's what sets you apart into the elite level of physical products e-commerce brand builders. And if you like this one and want to see how deep the rabbit hole goes, check out my course, the FBA Blueprint, at FBABlueprint.com, where I've got an entire module of hours and hours of different strategies around product development, product research, criteria, and strategies that set you up for success. And the price of the course is a fraction of what it could cost you if you choose the wrong product, and it's a fraction of the cost in terms of value that you can get from strategies like this. If you're here for the first time, go ahead and hit subscribe. We will be dropping another video next week. Thanks as always for tuning in. Appreciate your support, guys. Cheers.